Thank you for joining us for 3Bs on the Law podcast, hosted by Trisha Barita, Camille Canali, and Susan Dawson. Disclaimer, this podcast is for entertainment and informational purposes only, not meant to provide legal advice, and does not create an attorney-client relationship. Also, remember, laws change or they differ by jurisdiction, so this is not a substitute for seeking legal counsel in your jurisdiction on the current law applicable to you. Okay, welcome back to 3Bs on the Law. In early 2020, Facebook announced its $550 million settlement to resolve a lawsuit alleging it violated the Illinois Biometric Information Privacy Act, which was the largest consumer privacy settlement in the United States. So why should you care about that? Because biometric data and how it's used is a big deal. In fact, I think it's super fascinating and super scary at the same time. If you're not familiar of why biometric data may affect you, let's kind of talk about what biometric data is. And then we're going to get into kind of some a little bit like overview of each of our states, kind of how they're looking at it. But obviously, I've already mentioned Illinois, so the cat's out of the bag. They are definitely on top of this biometric data situation. Before I pass it over to Susan, I am going to tell you a little bit about biometric data, because this is kind of I feel like what is that, ladies, what was that Tom Cruise movie where the person, like, you look your eye in something and like you could tell where there's someone like committed a crime. I don't know if y'all remember that one. You all remember that one? Okay. I'm just thinking Tom Cruise because, you know, the Top Gun stuff is all about right now. Right. But like, yeah, Minority Report, I think is what it was called. And like,
oh yeah.
Yeah. And it was so like all that biometric data. And back when that came out, I remember thinking, ooh, that's so creepy. Like they're going to scan your eyeball and like know where you've been and what you've done and all of this. Well, I mean, that's kind of what this stuff is. I mean, when you're talking about biometric data, includes an individual's unique biological and physical characteristics, such as retina and iris scans, fingerprints, voice prints, facial scans, and hand geometry. Obviously, if you have anything like that on your phone that helps you open your phone, you're already familiar with the fact that somebody's collecting that information, at least on your phone, for you to be able to get access to it. Well, it's been used in a lot of different uses outside of just your personal use of potentially an electronic device. And so organizations nationwide are using them for authentication, monitoring, timekeeping with employees, other purposes, you know, uniquely suited to these human markers. You may think, well, what's wrong with that? It seems like things would be more secure. But really, like, the problem is if the data, whoever's collecting it, isn't being taken care of in a certain way and it gets out, it's really, really difficult to even like imagine to pay those damages, because your biometric data is so unique to you. So once it's out, it's really a huge problem for, once the cat's out of the bag, basically. So, I mean, it can be a major privacy issue, and it's hugely being recognized now by the states. I mean, all three of our states are interested in this, which I think we're kind of even excited about, because Texas is involved on this one, and Camille thinks that's pretty funny, but
I do.
Texas cares about privacy. So
listen, I love that Texas has some skin in the game for a change.
But actually, you know, California wasn't on the top list on this. Illinois actually came out strong in the legal area and has been the state to look to when it comes to biometrics. So I'll turn it over to our Miss Lady over there in Illinois, Susan. What's the deal with this Illinois Biometric Information Privacy Act that basically took down Facebook, kind of?
You know, I don't know if I should be happy. I feel like, woohoo, Illinois. We're always talking about California on this podcast, and California has a law, and California started it. And Illinois, yay, we started. Wait a second. I don't know that I should be happy about starting the biometric data legislation, but we did. So there you have it. And we actually did it quite a few years ago. So it's coming into the news lately in the last few years, but it's actually been around in Illinois for a long time. So basically, in Illinois, every employee has the right to sue a private employer who breaches the biometric data requirements. And if you qualify as a quote unquote aggrieved person, there's some really substantial damages that you can recover. So it's definitely something that businesses need to know about. So what does that mean? Well, Illinois employers cannot sell or trade or profit from an employee's biometric information, right? That's just your basic understanding. So you, even if you're just collecting it, you also can't profit from it. In addition, you can't disclose or distribute the biometric information unless the employee consents. So what do you have to do? Well, first you have to inform employees if you are collecting or storing their biometric information. Then you have to inform them of the time span that you're going to be collecting and why you're collecting and storing it. And then you need to get a release from the employee. So you must have a written policy on this. There's just no way around it if you are collecting any biometric information. And you need to be sure that policy is up to date. There's been a lot of new laws or new court cases around this where the Supreme Court has been not just the one like Facebook that's so in the news, but smaller ones where the court is interpreting who is an aggrieved party. For example, one recently that says that you don't have to actually prove damages to be an aggrieved party. So in addition to all of these damages, there's attorney's fees, costs, injunctive relief. There's a whole mess for employers to have to deal with. So if you are collecting biometric data of any way, or of any type, you better be sure you're aware of this law. You better be sure that you've got a proper policy in place and that you're getting appropriate releases. So that's, here in Illinois where we launched this initiative, but then California took it over. And I'm sure Kamel's going to tell us about how they went like 20 steps further. Right, Kamel?
Well, so California has the California Consumer Privacy Act. I think I mentioned it in another podcast that we did. And there are minimum thresholds that a business has to meet before it has to comply. But really, the thresholds for many businesses are pretty easy to meet, especially when you're talking about clicks on your website and things like that, and you're collecting data. It's not difficult to meet the minimum threshold. And it's not you must have this much revenue and this many visits and annual revenues of this amount. It's you meet one of those and you have to comply. And so that's what's a little bit different about this law. And you want to be careful, obviously, especially as a growing business and your marketing. You could easily explode. You have the hot product of the year, and suddenly you have well over the amount of business to your website. But the other kind of interesting thing is prior to the CCPA being enacted, we actually had a labor code, I think it's 1051, that prevented employers from sharing things like fingerprints or photographs to a third party. I suspect, and I haven't looked at when that labor code came into effect, but I suspect that we didn't have all this other biometric data available to us. And so obviously the new act expands on that. But
I thought where you were going was that you suspect that went out before Illinois.
I know, that's where I thought.
Thunder. That's where I thought where you were going.
I'm kidding. I don't know whether it did or not because I didn't look up the date that it was enacted. But you have to be careful because what if you're hacked? I mean, think about it. It seems like every couple months there's a big news story about I don't know whether Facebook, but some huge company getting hacked and having all of their consumers or some of their consumers' information. I know I've gotten emails from stores where I've shopped online about that very thing. Like, by the way, there was a breach in our security and your information may have been compromised. And so that's what these acts, I think in all of our states, are intended to protect people from. And so I think that because technology obviously is changing as we talk a lot, that we're going to see these laws and regulations evolve over time because they have to adapt to the changing technology and information that's available.
Yeah, well, guess who else has a
That's
law?
all I've got, ladies.
I know, I was going to say, well, you always pause, so we never know if you're done or you're just collecting your thoughts, Camille. But
No.
I wanted to say, guess who else has a law? Because Camille, come on, Texas. How could you not be all excited to throw that to Trisha?
I already told you I was happy that Texas has skin in the game.
Okay, so so the Illinois law, my understanding is that it being the first state biometric statute enacted,
Take
came into
that, Camille.
effect
Even
into.
Trisha says it.
I do. So my research shows yes, but since 2008, so the state of Texas though apparently took a liking to it because theirs came out in 2009. So
Wow.
yeah, very similar, copying a lot of the law, and a lot of very similar things. There's some differences, of course, because it's Texas, and there were some things I guess they did not care for, and so they did not adopt it. And in case you guys are wondering why we're talking about this sort of state issue, there's, although there's been proposed legislation, there has been so far no federal law that's talking about, no single federal statute specifically addressing the employer's obligation regarding the collection, use, or retention of biometric information. So while states might have other obligations under privacy, like HIPAA, GINA, of course, and the Fair Credit Reporting Act, with all those background check issues, we're talking about the states because we're not seeing anything uniform from the federal government. So Texas, I think, was concerned when they started to realize people were collecting this data potentially, and how are they going to use it? So the difference in Texas, though, is that they liked some of your definitions, Susan. They did go along with the retina or iris scan and the fingerprint, voice print, and that, hand or face geometry. But Texas said the key limitation of the Texas Capture Use of Biometric Identifier Act is that it only applies to biometric identifiers that are captured for a commercial purpose. But then, of course, they didn't define commercial purpose. So that's left up to interpretation here. And then they also were much more limiting on, how damages and such would come about, which is different, I think, than Susan in Illinois, where they laid it out there. So, hey, we're here. We're part of the party, but I'm not really sure, we're going to be the leading people in this situation. So that's a lot. I think we've covered some good bases. Do you guys have anything else to add about this?
I do. The labor code that I was speaking about, I couldn't resist. I looked it up. 1987, ladies.
You slut.
I couldn't help myself after the comments.
Okay, well, I'm gonna dig and see if I can't find something. Just kidding.
Okay, all right. I'm gonna call pause on this. We'll have to revisit this in another biometric data podcast. I think I'm gonna
the battle of the biometric something.
I'm going to have to be the mediator because I don't think we really care that much as you two do. But I'm, you know what? Hey, here we are trying to inform our fellow listeners and employers, CEOs, and leaders to make sure that they're checking this out before someone approaches you. I'll say this with an app that's like, hey, you should use this app, and it's a timekeeping app, and it'll collect, you can verify that it's the employee versus some sort of fraud, issue by having them use their handprint or use their face. Okay, that's all biometric data. So remember this little silly conversation we had here and think, do I want to go there? Because it really is at this point, you get into that world, you're now responsible for how that data is taken care of and how it's destroyed. And that's what all three of the states are interested in, and the other states coming out, is they want to know, what'd you do with the data? Did you destroy it? If you didn't destroy it, where is it? And if you don't have explanations for how that happens, especially if there's some type of breach, you're going to be in a world of hurt. So with that, I will break up this dispute between Camille and Susan for now, and I will call it a day. Thanks for listening again to 3Bs on the Law.
Thank you for joining us on today's podcast of 3Bs on the Law. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our podcast. We also welcome any comments. If you'd like to get in touch with us or suggest a future topic, you can email us at 3THREEBsonthelaw@gmail.com. And because we're lawyers, we need to remind you that this podcast is not meant to provide you with legal advice and does not create an attorney-client relationship. Thank you again for joining us, and have a great day.